What if the richest man in Seattle walked into a diner one stormy night and found the girl who once outshone him in school now serving coffee with tired hands? Benjamin Carter had everything a man could buy, and yet nothing he truly wanted. At 34, the founder of Orion Technologies was already a legend. His company's breakthroughs in data systems had made him worth more than the GDP of some nations. He lived atop the city in a penthouse of glass and steel where the skyline stretched like a kingdom at his feet. Yet for all the billions in his accounts, there was a hollowness in his chest he could never quite shake. That evening, the city glittered with tuxedos and champagne. A gala awaited him, another night of handshakes, hollow laughter, and endless speeches. His driver stood ready. His assistant reminded him of the schedule. But Benjamin could not stomach the thought of another sterile celebration of his own success, so he turned away. He left the polished car at the curb, shrugged on an old raincoat, and walked. The Seattle sky opened above him, the kind of rain that doesn't fall, but lashes sideways, drumming on rooftops, soaking through clothes, biting against the skin. He walked without purpose, past theaters spilling patrons into the night, past restaurants where valets huddled under awnings. His leather shoes grew heavy with water. His hair clung to his forehead. Still he walked. The towers gave way to worn brick and flickering neon. A laundromat hummed. A boarded-up bookstore sat in silence. And there between them, a dying neon sign buzzed weakly, the Harbor Grill. The windows fogged with steam promised refuge from the storm. Something about it tugged at him, a memory of simpler mornings long ago when his father would take him for pancakes at places just like this. He pushed the door open. A bell chimed a sound small but strangely profound in the stillness of his heart. The air inside was thick with frying bacon and burnt coffee. The booths were cracked vinyl, the kind that sighed when you sat down. A couple of truckers lingered over pie. An old woman nursed a chipped mug of tea. A college kid hammered at a laptop with tired eyes. Benjamin slid into a booth at the back, invisible in his rain-damp coat. For the first time in years, no one recognized him. No one cared. He picked up the plastic-coated menu, its corners soft with age. Then he heard her voice. "Be right with you, hun." He looked up and the world stopped. There she was. Clara Mitchell. The girl who once matched him grade for grade, who challenged him in debate, who filled the margins of her notebooks with sketches that stole his breath even then. His secret admiration, his fiercest rival, the one he had almost asked to prom, but never dared. Now she wore a tired polo shirt with the diner's faded logo. Her honey-brown hair was tied back in a hurried knot, strands clinging to her face. Her hands, once meant for charcoals and brushes, carried chipped plates stacked 3 high. There were lines of fatigue around her green eyes, but their fire, he knew that fire instantly. She moved past him without recognition, her gaze dulled by exhaustion, her posture carrying years of burden. But Benjamin's heart pounded as though he were 17 again. Curiosity, nostalgia, shock so quiet it hurt. He ordered a black coffee just to hear her voice again. And when the check came, he laid down far more than the meal cost, 2 crisp bills that seemed to burn on the table. As he rose to leave, he glanced back once more. She was pouring refills at another booth, not even glancing his way. The bell above the door chimed as he stepped back into the storm. And in the downpour, with rain streaming down his face, Benjamin Carter made a vow. "I will find out what happened to her." Benjamin Carter had never been a man to leave questions unanswered. The face he had seen in that diner haunted him like a melody half-remembered. Clara Mitchell. Once the brightest star in their class, now fading under the fluorescent lights of a greasy spoon. By dawn the next morning, he was already in his private study, the city still shrouded in mist. With a single call, he reached the only man he trusted for matters that couldn't appear on company ledgers. "Arthur," Benjamin said. His voice was steady, but beneath it ran an urgency he hadn't felt in years. Arthur Hale, a seasoned private investigator with a reputation for silence and precision, responded with his usual gravel. Name and details. Clara Mitchell, age 34, Northwood High class of 2007. Last seen working at the Harbor Grill. There was a pause on the line. Arthur had handled hostile takeovers in disguise, uncovered espionage plots buried in corporate shadows. But rarely did Benjamin call him about someone from his personal past. "I'll have something by sundown," Arthur said. When the report arrived that evening, Benjamin poured a glass of scotch he didn't drink and began to read. The story unfolded like a tragedy written in quiet ink. Clara Mitchell had once been accepted to the Rhode Island School of Design on a prestigious scholarship. Her professor's notes described her portfolio as visionary and singular in talent. For a semester, she thrived, grades flawless, her art alive with promise. Then the pages darkened. Her father, Daniel Mitchell, an architect with gentle hands and a steady smile, had been struck by Charcot-Marie tooth disease, a rare degenerative nerve disorder. Within months, his strength failed. His practice collapsed. Insurance barely scratched the surface of his care. Clara tried to balance it all. Classes in Providence, late-night shifts, at diners, long bus rides back to Seattle, but the weight was too heavy. Her withdrawal letter was included in the file. It was brief, formal. "Due to a severe family medical emergency, I must indefinitely suspend my studies." Benjamin set the letter down his chest, tightening. He could almost hear her writing it, pen-trembling dreams slipping away. The years that followed read like a slow erosion. Pawned jewelry, double shifts, retail jobs that chewed through her spirit. The Mitchell family home sold at a loss. And still, Clara stood firm, holding together her younger brother Ethan's future, as if her own no longer mattered. There was a line in the report that stopped Benjamin cold. Till Ethan Mitchell graduated from the University of Washington Computer Science. Debt-free thanks entirely to his sister's support. Benjamin leaned back in his chair, the city lights glittering behind him like a cruel constellation. Clara had surrendered her own starlight so her brother could shine. And then the memory cut sharp. The Harrison Scholarship. Their senior year. Two names whispered in the hallways as the front runners Benjamin Carter and Clara Mitchell. He had won it just barely. His essay had told of ambition of saving his family's home when his father's business faltered. But looking back, he knew. Clara had deserved it just as much. Maybe more. He closed the file, his jaw tight, his heart heavy with something close to shame. This was no tale of failure. It was a record of sacrifice. He whispered into the silence, his voice low resolute. "This is not charity. I will give her back the life that was stolen." Benjamin Carter was not a man accustomed to waiting. Yet when it came to Clara Mitchell, he found himself rehearsing words, second-guessing gestures, and pacing the floor of his penthouse like a restless schoolboy. He knew he couldn't simply walk back into that diner and drop a fortune in her lap. Clara's pride was a fortress. If he came with pity, she would slam the door and bolt it shut forever. So he crafted a different approach. Not charity, opportunity. 2 nights later, the storm had calmed, but Benjamin's pulse had not. He walked once more into the Harbor Grill, his raincoat dripping faintly, the bell above the door announcing him. Clara was behind the counter, her hair tied back, eyes shadowed by exhaustion. She glanced up and froze. Her lips parted in recognition this time. "Ben," she whispered, disbelief cutting through her voice. "Hello, Clara," he said, forcing steadiness. "It's been a long time." She crossed her arms, defensive already, as if bracing for whatever blow his presence might bring. A decade, at least. And a few $1 billion if the papers are right. The sarcasm stung, but he let it slide. He gestured to the booth he had taken before. "May I?" She hesitated, then gave a curt nod. 5 minutes. I'm on the clock." Benjamin slid into the booth, placing a leather folder on the table. The air between them crackled with unspoken history. "I didn't come here to dredge up the past," he began softly. "I came because I see a future. For you." He pushed the folder toward her. "The Orion Foundation is relaunching its outreach. We're creating a senior role lead creative director. Full salary benefits health coverage for your family. It's yours if you want it." Clara blinked, then let out a bitter laugh. "Is this a joke, you the billionaire savior offering the poor waitress a golden ticket?" Her voice trembled with pride and fury. "I don't need saving, Ben. Not from you, not from anyone." The words struck him, but he leaned forward, his gaze steady. "This isn't saving Clara. It's correcting something I should have done long ago." She frowned, caught off guard. He took a slow breath. "Do you remember the Harrison Scholarship? You and I were the finalists." Her eyes narrowed. "You won. End of story." "No," Benjamin said firmly. "Not the end. My family was drowning then. My father's business was collapsing, our house on the line. I wrote an essay that bled desperation. That scholarship was my lifeline. But Clara, you were every bit as deserving. Maybe more. I've carried that weight for years. This isn't charity. It's redemption." The shield in her eyes faltered. For a heartbeat, the fire softened, replaced by something raw, something wounded, and then the moment was shattered. "Mitchell." The voice barked across the diner. Mr. Dalton, the portly manager, with a permanent sneer, waddled over his eyes, flicking to Benjamin's tailored coat with suspicion. "What's going on here? This guy bothering you?" Clara flinched at his tone, but before she could speak, Benjamin rose. He stood taller than Dalton, his calm authority filling the room like a tide. "There is no problem." Benjamin said, his voice low, but laced with steel. "Clara and I are discussing her new position. She'll be leaving this diner soon." Dalton barked a laugh. "New position? What, cleaning your mansion?" Benjamin's gaze turned cold, a blade wrapped in velvet. "She'll be earning more in a month than you do in a year. And I'd choose my next words carefully, Mr. Dalton. Because I happen to know who owns this building, and I'm already aware of certain complaints about your management style." Dalton's smirk faltered, the color draining from his face. He sputtered, but no words came. Benjamin turned back to Clara, the storm of command, gone, his voice once again gentle. He slid the folder closer to her hand. "The offer stands. No pity, no charity. Just the chance you always deserved." Clara stared at the letter, her hands trembling slightly. Pride battled with longing, anger with hope. And for the first time in years, the door to her old dreams creaked open. Clara Mitchell had forgotten what it felt like to wake up with anticipation instead of dread. For years, mornings meant alarm clocks set before sunrise, aching feet, and the endless grind of double shifts. But the morning she first walked into the Orion Foundation blazer-pressed portfolio tucked under her arm, she felt something she hadn't felt since she was 18. Hope. The headquarters towered above downtown Seattle, a cathedral of glass and steel. Yet, on the 48th floor where the foundation lived, the air was different. Wood accents softened the edges. Living plant walls breathed life into the space. It wasn't a fortress of money, it was waiting for a soul. Dr. Elena Morales, the foundation's director, greeted her with a smile that felt genuine, not rehearsed. "Clara, we've been expecting you." She gave her a tour of the open spaces, the blank white walls, the half-finished branding boards. "This is your canvas," Elena said. "Ben believes you have the vision to bring this place alive." Clara swallowed hard, emotion catching in her throat. For the first time in over a decade, someone wasn't asking her to serve or survive. They were asking her to create. At first, her hands trembled as she sketched. Lines, shaky ideas halting. But as days turned into weeks, the artist she had buried began to reawaken. Her boards filled with sweeping designs, symbols of connection, hands reaching across digital divides, colors that breathed warmth into Orion's mission. Colleagues gathered around her workstation, whispering, then smiling. The sterile walls of the foundation slowly bloomed into visions of hope. One evening, Benjamin Carter walked the halls after hours. He paused outside her office unseen as she pinned a final draft to the wall. It was bold, elegant, alive. He exhaled softly, the corners of his mouth lifting. She was back. And seeing her reclaim that fire stirred something deep within him, something more than admiration. Days later, Clara walked back into the Harbor Grill, not in uniform, but in her own clothes, shoulders squared. Mr. Dalton was at the counter, his smirk dimmed ever since Benjamin's last visit. Clara handed him her apron, folded neatly. "I resign, effective immediately." Dalton opened his mouth, but no words came. He simply nodded, defeated. Clara didn't gloat. She turned instead to the corner booth where Martha, the elderly woman who had counted her coins for coffee, sat with her usual slice of pie. Clara placed a folded $100 bill by her plate and whispered, "The pie's on me for the next month." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "Bless you, child." Clara walked out without looking back. Outside across the street, Benjamin stood watching. He said nothing, but the pride in his eyes was unmistakable. In the weeks that followed, their professional bond deepened. They worked late, bouncing ideas, debating colors and symbols. And though neither spoke it aloud, there was a new electricity between them. A tenderness under the surface, fragile, but undeniable. For the first time in years, Clara's life was not only stable, it was blossoming. And then, one quiet evening, as she tidied her office, her phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line froze her breath. Sterling Contemporary Gallery. Invitation for solo exhibition. Her oldest dream, long buried, had returned. Clara could hardly believe her eyes. The email header glowed on her screen like something out of a dream. Sterling Contemporary Gallery. Invitation for solo exhibition. Her heart raced as she clicked it open. The message was polished, professional, dripping with praise. A curator claimed to have discovered fragments of her old portfolio online, early RISD work, and wanted to offer her a solo show in New York City. The words "solo exhibition" leapt off the screen. It was the dream she had buried under years of night shifts and unpaid bills, now resurrected like a miracle. She rushed into Benjamin's office, breathless. "Ben, you won't believe this." She handed him her phone, eyes alight. Benjamin scanned the email, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Clara, this is incredible. You deserve it. Of course, galleries would notice your work." She bit her lip. "It feels too good to be true." "Then we'll make sure it isn't," Benjamin said, conviction in his voice. "We'll have the legal team review everything. But Clara, you should be proud. This is what you were meant for." His faith in her drowned out her doubts. For the first time in years, she let herself imagine it, her paintings hanging under white lights, critics murmuring, a crowd gathered not to eat, but to see her. Later that evening, she showed the email to her brother Ethan. He adjusted his glasses, frowning slightly. "The server link looks odd. Not dangerous, but unusual." Clara hesitated, fingers hovering over her laptop. But the dream was too bright, too tantalizing. "It's probably just some gallery system," she said. Together they convinced themselves it was safe. With trembling excitement, she uploaded her portfolio sketches from RISD early paintings, even some of her fresh Orion Foundation concepts. The files crawled across the screen bar by bar, until at last the transfer completed. She leaned back, exhilarated. For the first time in a decade, the world seemed to open its arms. But in the silent hours after midnight, a different process began. Hidden in that link was a Trojan horse, its code invisible to the untrained eye. It slipped past defenses cloaked in the security credentials Clara had entered. Like a phantom, it crept through Orion's network, bypassing firewalls, hunting for one thing: the source code of Orion's revolutionary compression algorithm. The crown jewel. At 3:17 a.m., alarms lit the cybersecurity command center. Silent red icons flashed across a digital map of the network. A breach. A massive one. By dawn, the boardroom was chaos. Screens projected lines of damning evidence, the breach traced to a workstation on the foundation floor, the credentials unmistakable. Clara Mitchell. Directors shouted over one another. "Terminate her immediately. We need to contact federal authorities. This is corporate espionage on the highest level." Benjamin stood at the head of the table, jaw set, eyes narrowed. He said nothing. Inside him, two worlds collided: the empire he had built with relentless precision, and the woman he had only just helped rebuild her life. That evening, in the cold glow of the security war room, the final report appeared on the giant screen. Across it blazed her name in unforgiving letters. Clara Mitchell, primary suspect. Benjamin stared at it, his chest tight, his breath caught between fury and despair. The data screamed her guilt, but deep in his soul something whispered the opposite. His empire or his heart? The board clamored for Clara's head, voices rising like a mob. Protocol demanded immediate termination, federal escalation, public denunciation. But Benjamin Carter slammed his hand on the conference table, his voice cutting through the storm like a blade. "This stays in-house for 24 hours. No escalation. No outside calls. I will find the truth." The room fell silent. None dared oppose him when he spoke with that steel. Still doubt lingered in every eye. That night, Benjamin rode through the wet streets of Seattle, rain streaking across his windshield. He arrived at Clara's apartment, his heart a war drum. She opened the door, her face lit with joy, until she saw his. The smile faltered. "Ben, what's wrong?" On the balcony, away from her family's laughter, he told her everything. The breach, the stolen code. Her name branded on every file. The blood drained from her face. She stumbled back, gripping the railing. No, I thought it was real. The gallery, the show, my chance." Her voice broke into sobs. "I didn't know it was a trap." Benjamin reached for her shoulders. In her eyes, he saw devastation so raw, so unfeigned, that all his doubts shattered. The data might condemn her, but her heart spoke louder. "And we'll prove it," he said, his voice steady. "Together." Her brother Ethan stepped forward. "I looked at that link. The port it used was masked, rerouted through a non-standard channel. It was designed to look secure, but wasn't." Benjamin's mind ignited. "That's the crack we need." For the next 18 hours, Benjamin, Ethan, and Arthur Hale turned Orion's security center into a battlefield. Line by line, they dissected the Trojan. Buried deep inside, they found a signature string of code, crude but unmistakable. "Nix," Ethan whispered. "A mercenary hacker group." Arthur leaned back, grim. "And Nix works for one man, Victor Kane. Kane, the Predator CEO of Titan Systems. Benjamin's oldest rival, a man who viewed business as war and mercy as weakness. Of course he was behind it." Outrage surged through Benjamin, but it was sharpened into strategy. "If he wants Orion's crown jewel, we'll hand it to him, on our terms." They built a trap elegant and lethal. A false master algorithm polished to perfection, buried within Titan's own R&D servers. A honeyed fruit dangling on a poisoned branch. By dawn, the bait was set. And Kane, arrogant and hungry, took it. When he tried to open the stolen file from his own terminal, alarms sang silently. The FBI's Cybercrime Task Force, waiting on Benjamin's call, stormed Titan's glass fortress within the hour. Agents poured into Kane's office, catching him red-handed, his screens melting under the logic bomb Benjamin had hidden inside the bait. Years of Titan's research turned to ash before his eyes. It was over. The predator had swallowed his own hook. Back at Orion, Benjamin stood in the quiet aftermath, exhaustion heavy on his shoulders. He had saved his company. He had saved Clara. But one final battle remained. The world had seen the breach. The evidence still pointed to her. Benjamin buttoned his jacket, preparing for the press conference. Cameras, headlines, doubting eyes. Would they believe the truth, or would Clara remain guilty in the court of public opinion? The stage was set. The press conference hall buzzed with tension. Journalists packed shoulder to shoulder, cameras aimed like rifles. For 2 days, whispers had filled Seattle's financial district that Benjamin Carter's empire had been breached, that his newest hire, a woman from nowhere, was the culprit. Benjamin stepped to the podium, his expression calm but unyielding. The flash of bulbs painted him in white fire. He scanned the crowd, then spoke with the authority of a man who had nothing to hide. 2 nights ago, Orion Technologies faced an unprecedented cyber attack. The evidence pointed to one of our own. But that evidence was a lie, crafted by those who fear innovation and integrity. A murmur rippled through the audience. Benjamin continued, his voice steady. Clara Mitchell is not a traitor. She is a creator, a leader. And because of her and because of her brother Ethan's brilliance, we not only uncovered the truth, we turned the trap back on those who said it. Gasps, scribbles of pens, the clatter of keyboards. He let the moment breathe. Today, I announce a new division at Orion, dedicated to cybersecurity, co-headed by Ethan Mitchell. This family's sacrifices will not be forgotten. They will be honored. The hall erupted, questions shouted, cameras flashing, but the tide had shifted. The truth had prevailed. Clara's name was no longer stained. It was redeemed. Weeks later, the Orion Foundation reopened under a new banner. The sterile halls were alive with color. Clara's designs breathing humanity into every corner. The centerpiece was unveiled before a hushed crowd, a canvas taller than a man alive, with shadow and light. She had named it The Ghost in the Machine. Dark swirls of chaos dissolved into radiant arcs of gold, a storm breaking into dawn. Benjamin stood beside her, transfixed. For him, it was more than a painting. It was her story. Their story. He leaned close, his voice a whisper meant only for her. All the data said you were guilty. But I chose to believe you. Clara turned to him, her eyes shimmering, her voice steady. And I chose to believe you'd see my heart. Their hands found each other, no longer Billionaire and Waitress, but partners, equals. The narrator's voice softened as the scene faded, carrying the lesson home. True worth is never measured in titles, dollars, or data. It is found in the resilience to endure and the courage to trust when it matters most. A pause, gentle and reflective. If this story moved, you share it with someone who believes in second chances. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Would you have trusted the data or your heart? And if you want more stories of redemption and resilience, we'd be honored if you subscribed. The screen lingered on Clara's painting light, breaking through darkness before fading to black.